let's start with an exercise. With a show of hands, how many people here know someone or have known someone who suffered from a rare disease? Hands up. Seems like quite a few of us. Although I would say this data sample is a little bit biased. We all come from, or most of us at least, come from healthcare, if not clinical research. More on data biases just in a few short minutes. So it turns out rare diseases are not so rare. 1 in 10 Americans suffer from a rare disease. There's a significant unmet clinical need facing humankind. 1 patient on every elevator you ride, 4 on every bus. There are so many rare diseases, and at the same time, there's been quite a bit of hype around AI in the last couple of years. Often these technology hype cycles don't last. Anybody here remember the mini disc? But at the same time, AI has shown incredible promise. Amongst the many early validations of AI in clinical research and healthcare, frankly, the MIT Tech Review relates the story of an 80-year-old patient who was suffering from an incurable blood cancer. His physicians had tried every known therapy, but to no avail. He was rapidly dying. Out of options, his physicians decided to enroll this patient in a clinical trial. The trial sponsor, Exscientia, a computational drug discovery company, took a sample of the blood, separated out the healthy cells from the cancerous cells, and tried a myriad of different treatments, leveraging a combination of computer vision, machine learning, and robotic process automation to see how the therapies impacted those cells. The experiment resulted with a candidate therapy that was never indicated and never prescribed for blood cancers. Upon administration of this therapy, the patient went into remission and stays in that state 2 years later today. But AI requires lots and lots of data. And the data needs to be representative of the population of instances. Remember, we just raised our hands a few minutes ago, letting everybody know if you knew somebody who had a rare disease, who had suffered from a rare disease in the past. Well, our data sample was biased. We come from healthcare. If we had extrapolated our results on the general population, we would have massively overestimated the incidence of rare disease in the population. So, to generate reliable conclusions and power robust AI models, we not only need to generate significant amounts of data, but we have to sample this data from multiple distributions to reduce the bias, which in turn increases the data volume requirements. So how much data are we talking about? As an example, OpenAI's ChatGPT-4 was trained on 1 petabyte of written text data. For those of you who remember CD-ROMs, I'm not really sure why I have disks on the brain, but that's 1.5 million CD-ROMs. If we stacked them one on top of each other, we'd get a pile of CD-ROMs 1.2 miles high. And it's also 3 million mini disks, because they're mini. Also, good luck finding one. reCAPTCHA, the information security company that we love so much that provides us these puzzles that we have to identify various objects and prove that we're not robots, is actually a machine learning model in training. So it creates an opportunity through this security access feature for you to identify multiple objects, and that training information is used as labeled training data sets for computer vision models. To teach a computer how to identify a single object, it takes approximately 100,000 examples of that object. So 100,000 examples of an umbrella, and there are many, many umbrellas to learn. There are many, many diseases to address. On the horizontal axis here, you see common diseases all the way to rare diseases. On the vertical axis, you see low to high market need. Each bubble on this chart is a disease, and the size of the bubble indicates the patient prevalence. 95% of known diseases have no known therapy. And it's not just rare diseases, as you can see here. To address these diseases, we need to leverage the promise of AI to drive radical outcomes, as we do not have enough human resource power alone to tackle them all. So a bit of a personal story here. My uncle was diagnosed with a rare disease known as pseudobulbar palsy. Anybody know what that is? Yeah, we didn't either. So it was only until he started to rapidly deteriorate did his physicians confer an ALS diagnosis. Unfortunately, a death sentence. Within a year and a half, he was gone. I've said it before, there are so many rare diseases, many of which are death sentences like ALS, but approximately only 3,500 patients per rare disease on average. Most of us come from healthcare. Do any one of our organizations or our companies alone have enough data capture to drive better and earlier diagnoses of such diseases, as well as drive better treatments just with the data set that they have? And herein lies what I'd call the clinical research AI paradox. AI is fueled by data. No organization has enough information to drive the identification of anything more complex than an umbrella. And I would posit that data sharing is going to be critical to power the AI revolution in clinical science. Patients and our loved ones are awaiting new cures. But there's some strong reasons why you shouldn't share your data. If you're on the pharma side, pharma has significant financial risk. It takes multiple billions of dollars. It takes almost 2 decades to bring a new therapy to market. Let's say you achieve your endpoints on your pivotal trial, you're ready to commercialize, and you share that trial data with the public or third party, and that third party identifies any discrepancies in the data. Well, now you've just put billions of dollars of revenue and nearly 2 decades of work at risk. Regulators need to ensure that consumer privacy is maintained, especially with the global rise in many privacy laws in Japan, EU, UK, and even here in the States with the California Privacy Protection Law, CPP. Patients want to ensure that their data is not weaponized and used against them. I can't tell you how many different insurtech startups and companies I'd heard about in the last 20 years that leverage lookalike modeling based on consumer data, and that's specifically that consumer's data, to generate that, to get around some of the cherry-picking laws and get around all those regulations related to cherry-picking on insurance claims and coverage. This last piece rings true to me, just given some of my background. 80% of data science is really harmonizing the data and prepping it for analytical consumption. It is incredibly hard for data scientists to pool together data and harmonize it from various companies' data collection methods, sources, lineages, formats. It's much easier to just focus on one data collection method, one company's data, etc. But I think the most problematic, the most challenging aspect of this is who benefits from the value, especially with rare disease, where oftentimes the sharing of the data and the work to share the data outweighs and surpasses the open market value and purchase price for such data. Well, there are some powerful and incredibly beneficial reasons for you to share your data. On the pharma side, pharma and therapy product developers will drive more revenue through development of many new therapies with higher probabilities of success and lower risk of failure, which impacts price as well. We know that's a focus with the IRA, and faster and more efficient development cycles. You know, one of the things we saw with regulators, especially a challenge we faced at Lokavant, was how to merge multiple data sets from multiple different sources, sponsors, CROs, etc., without violating privacy and consumer concerns. So we learned we can tokenize and anonymize different identifiers to ensure to regulators that customer and consumer privacy will be maintained while enabling more safe and efficacious treatments to go through development. And I think this is a good segue for patients. Again, through tokenization and anonymization approaches, patients can mitigate fears that their data will be weaponized or used against them while still accessing better treatments. And through ontological as well as, especially in the last few years, generative AI approaches, data scientists can rapidly harmonize data from multiple sources, hastening the preparation of that data for analytical consumption. But who benefits from the value of the data? I don't suggest that I have the singular answer to this very thorny issue, but I will suggest one solution in two parts. To reduce the work and the cost, as well as address the business risk in physically transferring the data. And I want to double-click on that for just one moment, because oftentimes we create agreements around data collection without anticipating down the line a need to share that data with third parties. And once we come to that use case, it's incredibly hard to go back and change your contracts in the first place. So to get around that, we can leverage federated models, where the data stays with the data owners, and a shared model can access the data where it sits in a compliant manner. And while this addresses business risk and the costs of physically transferring the data, especially when those costs surpass the open market and transactional data value itself, the purchase price of the data, it doesn't directly address who benefits from the value of the output. So in New York City, where I'm from, we have a lot of crazy things, right? One of those things I just want to talk about for a second is co-ops. Instead of buying a condo or an apartment outright, in a co-op, we buy shares in the corporation that is the apartment complex. As the value of the apartment complex increases, so does the value in those equity shares in the co-op. If we can organize around strategic ventures or partnerships focused on particular disease states, like Parkinson's disease, and pool resources from a number of these parties, all could receive in the equity value that far surpasses just the transactional data value itself. There are countless stories of biotechs. I'll admit it was in the last few years, a lot of these, but there's biotechs that basically have raised $25 million around one indication and then sold for multiple billion dollars just a few years later. Imagine how we could accelerate this process through the pooling of different data sources for all known sources of Parkinson's disease right now. This is a complex socio-technical issue, hence the very technical diagrams and system maps in the last few slides. But what does this mean for you or for me? It means more cutting-edge approaches to detecting and managing disease. And we know that early detection is the best prevention. It means more opportunities for non-invasive data collection developed on algorithms that are correlated and validated against disease detection and progression, and deployed on our everyday devices like our smartphones, our watches, our smart wear that's becoming even more popular these days. It means keeping us out of hospitals and healthcare centers and allowing us to engage in more full lives with our families and loved ones. As we saw on the prior chart, there are so many unmet clinical needs. We need a paradigm shift to generate radical outcomes. To achieve radical outcomes, we need an AI strategy because we do not have enough human resource power or brute force to tackle all the unmet clinical needs. But to generate a valuable AI strategy, we need a data strategy because data fuels AI models. And I hope I've convinced you today that to create a powerful data strategy, we need a data sharing strategy. Before we scale learning machines, we need information to teach those machines. And for that, we need the principles and norms by which we share this information. The moment you start considering AI projects within your organizations or starting to leverage these capabilities internally, think first of the data that will power these solutions. Then explore how we can work together with different algorithm developers, different data sources, different collection groups, physicians, regulators, patients, to pool the best information and generate the optimal predictions for applied science, benefiting humankind by eradicating disease, especially rare disease, through the power of AI. Thank you.